All right, I am up at the restaurant and today is Wednesday. So, Wednesday is delivery day. We get our briskets delivered and we spend the day trimming them and getting them ready to throw in the smoker in the morning. And I'm going to just kind of walk you through the process of trimming a brisket. At least the way that we have found works well for us. So this one's kind of a little one, so I thought it would be a perfect one to show you. So I took it out of the package. It's still really, really cold, which is going to help trim this fat cap, and having a sharp knife is very, very important. So this thicker portion over here, let me turn this on its side. This thicker portion over here is the point. This is the fattier portion. This is what we make our burnt ends out of. And then this thinner end over here is the flat. There's a point and a flat. They're both two different muscles that come together, overlap right about right here. And the flat continues to go all the way underneath the point, all the way to the end. And this is where we get all of our slices for sliced brisket. For when you order it by the pound, it's a lot more lean. And I think that that is part of the trickiness with cooking a brisket that a lot of people have trouble with, is how do you get this bigger, thicker, fattier portion cooked and rendered down properly without overcooking this part over here that it's attached to. So after years and years of practice, we have figured it out. So you always kind of want to have the point rounded. So I like to do this first. Sometimes it will come as pretty much angled all the way this way and end up cutting a bigger portion of that off. So we save all of this. This extra meat goes into a bowl that we grind down for our brisket burgers and other items that we make with our ground brisket. Next, this whole area is almost always covered completely with this thick fat cap. It's thicker in other areas than others, some areas than others. We want to keep it about 1/4 of an inch all the way around. So right here, I don't need to do anything. This is perfect just the way it is. So I'm going to kind of follow it around and see where it gets thicker, and see where I need to maybe trim some of that off. So to give me a better bird's eye view, I like to kind of trim this portion down a little bit so that I can start at this end and have better control. So just gonna trim all the way across, and then I'll show you what I mean to where I can kind of see better what I'm working with. So remove that. Now I've exposed this a whole lot better, so I can really work with it. So I'm gonna come in on the side, and I'm gonna trim to where it's just about 1/4 of an inch, and it doesn't have to be exact. And I'm going to do this, I like to do it in sections. I feel like it gives me better control. And I like to start from the sides and work my way in toward the center. So if I go at an angle, which I kind of am, I'm going at an angle like this, just giving it this much of a 1/4 of an inch. Then when I go back later and I go across the top to kind of even it out, I've kind of got my mark right here as to where I had cut, and it's a pretty good gauge. Once in a while, it's not accurate, and I end up kind of scalping it a little bit. Corey's a lot better at not doing that than I am. So I just take portions off, remove them, put them to the side, and I like to work in sections, so I'll kind of mostly work on the flat right here, and then I'm going to get over here because I'm dealing with a little bit of a different type of fat. So this fat over here is very squishy. Oh, see, scalped it. Corey's going to point that out to me later in a fun way, of course. So it's very squishy. It's gross. It's a different type of fat. This fat is a lot easier to render down. It renders down a lot quicker when we are cooking it than this thicker, harder fat over here. So just, I approach both ends and both types of fat in a different way. So that's why I like to just focus on one section at a time. And this fat is very, it easily coats your knife. So even though this knife was just sharpened before I started, I'm going to end up sharpening it again before I start my next brisket. And you know, this fat it kicks the knife, so I like to try to keep the blade really exposed so that I'm getting the most out of what I'm doing. And so mostly so I don't cut myself. Lots and lots and lots of cuts. Our hands are both covered in scars, mostly from trimming brisket. And that's no fun. Also, this is a little harder to trim, so I sometimes like to put my fingers under here, lift it up, and make it a little bit more taut. And then I also have more control rather than feeling like I'm pushing down. I can really try to get this as close to the meat itself without continuing to scalp it. This is not going to be an issue at all, but obviously if the entire brisket were full of these, it's not ideal. This fat protects the meat. Not so important necessarily always over here, but definitely over here, because like I said, this is a leaner muscle portion of the brisket. So we need to keep it covered and protected, keep it juicy. So we want to definitely take a little bit more time over on this portion. Putting a brisket in the freezer for a half an hour or so prior to doing this also helps firm up that fat, making it for an easier trim. Did not do that with this one. This is I'm not certain how many briskets we have. This is one of, I'm not sure how many. We got a few cases out there, so we get them all prepped, trimmed down today. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of meat to do. We put them in food safe bins in the fridge, and then we put them, the ones will go on tomorrow for Friday's cook. And then while we're up here working on Friday and open, we are also going to be cooking the meat on Friday for Saturday's sell. And then the same thing on Saturday for the meat that we will sell on Sunday. So briskets take about approximately, oh, I did it again. Briskets take approximately, well, they take us approximately 21 hours to cook. All depends on the size. This one was the smallest one in the case that I had opened. Most of our briskets are easily about this big by about almost the width of the cutting board. And those will definitely take longer. This one will be done sooner. Again, not the end of the world if you do this. You just want to try not to. I've been doing this for years now, and it still happens. Like I said, Corey's a lot more skilled at this than I am. So his almost always look perfect. But, and then not only does size affect it, the cook time, just every animal is different. It depends on the fat that, how it's marbled and all of that. So I'll get to that in a minute. All right, so now we're over here. This is a very different type of fat. It's very hard. It's very much like lard in texture, I guess. And it does not render down. So it is very important that we get this as close to the point with our trim as we can. And we also put the point section in the hottest portion of our smoker to help really render that down, and it is thicker, so it takes a little bit longer to cook. And it's so weird because I don't know, like halfway through the cook, if we were to temp these, this side is going to have a completely different temperature than this side, but somehow toward the end it all just kind of rounds up and they both end up being the same when they're all done. Also, we have these tendons that kind of run through, and they're a little hard. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm not a fan of it. So it's always right here around the edge, and I like to just trim that off because I don't like it. Brisket's supposed to be tender, not have any tough portions. So I'm going to flip this guy over. Alright, so this right here, this is, you can kind of see right here where this is that bottom flat and this is the top point. This is where they overlap. It's usually not split open like this this much, but both of these muscles are separated by a strip of fat that runs all the way through the middle. It starts kind of here and connects and goes all the way through to the other side. And while this is good meat right here, it's very flappy. So I'm gonna remove it, but it will get used. Kind of like what I was saying before with why we trimmed this rounded and instead of having it pointed, is we want it to be more aerodynamic so that the smoke kind of flows around and goes over, and we'll make sure that that happens in this direction as well. But when we have these pieces hanging off like that, it disturbs that, and these ends are just going to get a lot more of the smoke and the heat, and they're going to burn off. They're going to burn. They won't burn off, but they'll burn. And you're going to end up cutting it off anyway, so we just remove it now so that we can use it for something else and have a nice brisket that is as uniform as we can make it. There's a lot that goes into the whole process, and certain little things can really make a big difference. So you learn after a while. You pick up little tricks, and looking at the finished product, it's like, okay, why did this do this, and how can we prevent that next time? But we've gotten to a point where we pretty much do it the same all the time now. I'm scalping it again. So I try to, with this stuff, it's so hard to tell. Like over here you can see like how thick it is, and it's pretty much the same all the way across. These big hard pieces, they could be like this thick sometimes, they could be this thick, and it could be that thick over here and that thin over here, and you never know. So with this fat, I try to feel like right here it's a whole lot harder than right here, so I know that there's more here, and just go a little bit at a time until it feels nice and smooth and not nice and smooth, but nice and soft, smooshy. You can smush it in there pretty well. Alright, so I think that's it for this guy on this side. Nope, I'm going to come over here. So there's this strand of fat right here, very hard. I would love, in the beginning I used to love, I just wanted to get all of the stuff out. I'm like, oh, I don't like it. So I would want to kind of gouge in there, and you never want to gouge because again, then it's not aerodynamic. Then you're creating all of these little divots and pockets, and then you're affecting this meat. If I were to do that right here, this meat right here is going to be a lot more likely to not cook the way that we want it to. So I'm going to flip it over. This other side I don't typically mess too much with. So like this is very, 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 very thin. I'll trim some off just to show you. But I usually don't even mess with this. It's very, very, very thin. And so it's that thin. Thinner than cardboard. So and this side's gonna go down on the smoker. So my theory is, if this stuff is all going to render down, like when this brisket's done, this fat's gonna be all gone. All gone. You're just gonna have this gorgeous, glorious meat underneath. So this is all gonna render away in 21 hours. I know what this stuff is, so I don't bother removing it. This little piece right here is a little thicker, and I do want to kind of round off this corner a little bit, so I'm just going to cut that right off there. Now, however, this right here is hard. This is a whole hard chunk that just comes kind of right through, and I do cut this off because we don't need it, and it's not going to render, and I would like to expose the meat that's underneath it to the smoke so it gets a beautiful bark and has as much flavor as possible, because we're not serving fat, we're serving meat. So I'm just going to kind of go into here and keep carving this out. I like to peel up and look to make sure that I'm not getting too much of the meat, if any is the goal. So, and then sometimes this just comes right up too, but this is not the time. So, dig in here, dig in, cut into here. So the goal is to leave fat on the top to protect it, but just enough so that it will all render, and to keep it as shapely as possible for the purpose of that shape. Here's where I think it usually just peels right up. So, and I like to, a lot of times I'll just let my knife do some of the work for me. It depends on the portion of the fat. Like this one's not being very cooperative, but other briskets will. Every animal is different. Every brisket is different. We've opened some briskets before to where we're like, wait, is this even a brisket? This shape is so weird. And there's a hard piece right here. Just gonna kind of get that off. There's a lot of YouTube videos out there of people trimming briskets and the way that they do it, and it also has a lot to do with their reason for cooking. If you're cooking for a competition, you're probably going to do it very a lot more in depth and be a lot more. See this point right here? It's just going to burn. I'm going to cut it off, make it more rounded. You're going to be a lot more particular in all of that. We're cooking to feed a bunch of people, and the finished product, how beautiful it looks, is not as important as how it tastes and how tender it is. So we might have a different purpose for our brisket than people who are trimming theirs in a different way. A lot of the videos I see, they take pretty much all of this off, but they also might be cooking hotter and faster, and not giving all of this fat enough time to render. I'm not sure. And some people just learned that they're supposed to do it a certain way, and from watching videos and maybe barbecue shows on TV, so they just have it in their mind that that's how they need to do it. Some people will purchase just a flat at the grocery store and go home and smoke it and wonder why it didn't work out. I do not recommend that. It's going to be dry. It's going to cook so much faster, and it's not going to have enough time to break down. You need that low, 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 slow, and having this all together really helps do that. So this is all done. This is going to go on into a food safe bin into the fridge. Tomorrow we're going to take these out, set them all out, and do a nice generous coating of kosher flake salt and coarse ground pepper, and then we're going to flip it over and do the same on this side, kind of give it a nice little shape, pat it all down, and put it on the smoker, and and that's where it's going to stay for approximately 21 hours. We're going to take it off, let it rest for a couple hours, let those juices redisperse back in so that we don't lose them. And then Friday, around about a half an hour before we open, we're going to slice one of these up and get ready to serve it. So that's what we do. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm not sure how many people are even going to be interested in this, but I know a lot of people are. And I just